rank here and say that I may be the oldest person here. And after 15 years in New York City, starting in the early 70s, having played with a lot of guys, and you have not lived until you've been the only woman in a New York trumpet section. I have a little joke here. Can I tell a joke? Okay.
Please, we love some love.
Okay, so a horn section is on the way to the gig. Trumpet player, trombone player, and saxophone player. And they have a horrific car accident and they all die. So they're headed up to heaven. And God is sitting outside the pearly gates on his throne. And so he sees these musicians. He says, I'm very sorry about your accident. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are and why I should let you in? And so the saxophone player says, well, I played music for a living and I made people happy, and I'd like to come in. And God says, looks down from his throne and says, well, that sounds good to me, you're in. And then God looks to the trombonist and says, and what's your story? And the trombonist says, well, pretty much the same thing. I played music for a living and I made people happy, and I'd like to come into heaven. And God says, yes, sounds good to me. Thank you for your music. And God looks down from his throne to the trumpet player and says, and so, how about you? And the trumpet player says, well, I'll tell you in a moment, but first I think you're sitting in my chair. So what's it like to be a woman musician? Well, a woman trumpet player, it's really a drag. It's really a drag. I spent 15 years in New York being the only woman in a lot of trumpet sections with a lot of bands, including Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, Machito, Larry Elgart, blah, blah, blah. I think it maybe is a little better now, but the instruments are very gender identified, and if you're a trumpet player or a drummer, you're on the hot seat. If you play saxophone or piano, it's a whole lot easier. My mission right now, I have to say, is as an activist, and I think I'm probably much more in your face than anybody else up here, and have been for many years. I see serious gender bigotry in jazz. For example, Jamie Aebersold, who for about 40 years has run his jazz workshop in Louisville, last year had 63 faculty and no women, not one. But 30% of the students who applied and showed up were girls. So when I found out what the faculty makeup was, I put up a petition on moveon.org and collected about 600 signatures. You know, where are the women? Not only does he deny women pros employment as faculty, he provides no role models for girls. And I also talked to about half of his faculty there, all male, and they don't see a problem with this. Their take is, well, we provide role models for girls, but they're men. No, this is not how it works. I'm so sorry, but you don't understand. Every one of them defended him, and he was recently, I think last week, got an award as a NEA Jazz Master. And to me, giving an award to an educator like Jamie Aebersold, who is a gender bigot in jazz, is like giving George Wallace an award from the Governors Association. And I have to say that I get hate email from many, many people, including his friends, and a lot of women who think that I'm radical. Yes, I guess I'm radicalized. My experience as a jazz trumpet player from high school, when I was the only pro girl trumpet player, quote unquote, in Milwaukee from the age of 16 until now, has really, really radicalized me. I'm very angry about the situation. I think women have been asking for 100 years, please let us in, with not a lot of progress. I say it's time to force men to give up power. I remember as an anti-war activist in college when Cambodia was invaded, I remember learning that no one gives up power, you have to take it. And I think we have to take it. And I think it's time. So please write to Tim Jackson at the Monterey Jazz Festival and ask him why there were only 2 women instrumentalists there last year. And they will tell you there were lots of women, whole bunch of vocalists, whole bunch of jazz artists' wives who spoke about their husbands, but 2 women instrumentalists out of hundreds of acts. This happens everywhere all the time. I am sick to death of it. I don't think anything's going to change until people start grousing to the festivals, to the college programs who have 50 male faculty and no women, like USC, UCLA, North Texas State, Indiana University. Let's get some women on these faculties. Let's have some jazz camps, summer camps run by women for girls. Let's have more women showing up on festivals and in concert halls. The only way this is going to change is if people tell the promoters and the people who are doing the hiring that they will not show up and they will not buy tickets. We will not recommend your workshop, your summer workshop. We will not go to your college unless we see some women in the faculties and in performances. Please help us. We need you.
Yeah, I would. Everybody knows who Wynton Marsalis is very well identified as a jazz ambassador, and he has said that he has no women in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra because there aren't any who are good enough. And what I would like to say is that he should be holding blind auditions where the gender and the race and anything else is not a factor, because, you know, the composition of American orchestras changed almost overnight when they went to blind auditions. American orchestras are about 50% female now, and throughout the orchestra. And so there's a situation. If you don't believe, he should be able to stand by his word and say, okay, I'm going to take the best players. I don't know who they are until they've won the audition, and he might be really surprised.
Yeah. That's what Carleen May said in our film. She said, put anyone behind a curtain, you tell me who's a man and who's a woman playing.
Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Just one simple one. What time of day was the 2008 photo taken?
It was in the afternoon. It was probably about 3 o'clock.
Yeah, because Arcane had said it was a miracle to get anyone to show up at 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
that's right. We were smarter than
Arcane. We knew we were still dealing with jazz musicians, whether they were men or whether they weren't going to get up early.
I never met one before he did the photograph.
That's right. He learned a lesson there, and we learned from him.
Yes, back there.
You might have said this before, but what clubs in the Bay Area for women playing that? Is there any clubs
No clubs as a rule will program women's musicians, but if you'd like to follow the Montclair Women's Big Band, which features some of the best players in the Bay Area, 17 women, come to our website, sign up to be on our email list. Yeah, it's a problem. You can check out Yoshi's Oakland.
Yes.
The Jazzschool will frequently feature women artists. I'm not really sure. Duende in Oakland, new jazz club. But you really need to search out the artists themselves. And I bet if you Google women jazz artists Bay Area, you'll get a whole bunch of information. It's not like a club will do it. It's like the artist will do it. And we need your support.
Yes, you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say something about role models and how important they are, what Ellen was talking about. I was talking last night to Dave Tidball, who's the saxophone player in my group, and he teaches music in the Oakland Public Schools, and he teaches elementary and middle school music. And he said in elementary school, the amount of girls and boys playing non-traditional, quote, instruments for females is equal. In other words, the girls are there, they're playing drums, they're playing trumpet, they're playing bass. And then he said when it gets to middle school, it totally changes, and the girls have dropped out, and there are hardly any girls playing jazz. So why does that happen? Because, you know, this is sort of classic. This happens not just with jazz, but, you know, girls who are so confident when they're little kids, and then they get to be, you know, preteen, and they think, oh, girls don't do this. This is going to be weird. And they need to have those role models. They need to have them as teachers. They need to see them on TV. They need to hear them. So I think this is so crucial for the generation coming up. And yeah, having those teachers at all levels, the elementary school level, the high school level. I mean, the director of the Berkeley High jazz program, we've got a woman there now, Sarah Klein, fabulous trombone player, plays in big band. Berkeley High is a very prestigious jazz program. I mean, this is just great. The girls in that high school, they can see, oh, the jazz, I mean, how many jazz directors at high schools are women? So I think this is, going forward, I think this is so crucial. And any way that we can foster that for those girls coming up so that they have those role models.
We also need to really sit on summer jazz camp directors who will hire less than 10% women of their faculty. They will have half their students be girls, but they think that guys, I mean, I've heard this a million times, the men are role models for the girls. No, it doesn't work like that. So the Lafayette Jazz Camp West, Stanford Jazz Camp, you need to hire some women as faculty members. And I would also like to, shameless self-promotion here, my partner Gene Feinberg and I run the only girls jazz camp, the Jazzschool Girls Jazz and Blues Camp, which has been sold out the last 2 years, the only one of its kind in the world where we have a camp for only girls with a women's faculty. We also run a women's camp with the same structure. And I can't tell you what a life-changing experience this is for women and for girls. I think I have a number of my friends out here, raise your hands please, who have been to the women's jazz camp at the Jazzschool in Berkeley. It's a life-changing experience. I don't have any girls here right now, but 56 of them last year in August told us basically the same thing. There is no substitute for women role models for girls in jazz.
A question?
Yes, go to the Jazzschool or Google Girls Jazz and Blues Camp at the Jazzschool or Women's Jazz and Blues Camp. In fact, I have some brochures for the women's camp.
But their joyousness at being musicians, their joy of playing music, somehow carried them through. And throughout their lives, they remained joyous people. And I think that if there's anything that music has to give to people, it's joy. And that they were able to keep that joy, despite everything they went through, was quite amazing to me. So that was really a wonderful experience for me.